Good morning. I hope everyone is having a fantastic start to your day or your week. Hope you had a great weekend too. All right. Well, let's get into it. First, as always, all thoughts and opinions here are those of my own. I don't represent anybody, no past, present, or future employers. All right. Let's jump into security. Then we'll get into some cloud news. There's some interesting cloud news that came up. Microsoft Azure had their Ignite. I'm not even sure that I've gotten everything from the Ignite, so there might be some late news next week as I continue to sift through some of the stuff. There's actually more with the Azure cloud than I thought there was going to be. So yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. I think that they were maybe trying to get out in front of reInvent, so I think that they did a decent amount of stuff there. So anyways, anytime there's things like reInvent or Azure, it takes a little while to actually go through everything, to sift through all of it. It takes a little bit of time, but I will do my best to get the biggest things. So I'll show you guys the things that I saw. All right. Just organizing a few tabs. Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late. So yeah, okay. Let's jump into our security section. I didn't have a whole lot of really interesting things here. So we're gonna start out with there was a Zimbra 0-day flaw that had almost 900 servers hacked using a 0-day. So that was probably the most egregious thing that happened. There were a few other things. There's a new caffeine service that lets anyone launch Microsoft 365 phishing attacks. That's always good. There's this one I actually found very interesting, although I couldn't find information to back it up. I was trying to find other people, other documents, other things, but I failed to do that with the timing attack. So basically, the NPM timing attack that they do here is basically there's a difference in time for the 404 not found for private repositories. So this allowed people to make requests for random packages, and you'd get a 404 for private and just repositories that didn't exist, and that they were able to leverage that to attack the private repositories for supply chain attacks. So anyways, it was kind of an interesting loophole, just because for some reason the backend system to NPM took longer to respond for whatever it was doing. Probably because what it was doing was it found the repository and then it was checking your credentials or your scopes or whatnot, which causes the difference. Anyways, it was a fun thought process. Moving on. Toyota discloses data leak after access key exposed on GitHub. This was true. They did have a little bit of a slip up there. This happens to a lot of people. This right here. This happens to a lot of people and a lot of open source projects, more than you would know. Now, that being said, if you're an open source project on GitHub, they actually have free things to keep you from posting your keys on an open source project. I should probably do a video on how to enable that. But yeah, actually I will. That will be an easy. I've been looking at doing some easier things that are shorter videos because it's been taking me too long to do the last video out. And I ended up re-recording a section of it just for you guys to make it even better, explain the things a little bit better, I think, hopefully. And so yeah, maybe I'll do that one. That will be a good one. All right, so Microsoft October 2022 Patch Tuesday fixes 0-day used in attacks. So that was good. Microsoft is allegedly investigating another zero-day exchange. That's in the wrong spot. That's it. Those were the most interesting things I saw in the security. There's a lot of 0 days. Exchange seems to have a lot of I say another. I'm a little harsh on Exchange. It feels like Exchange, it always has some security bug. All right. So let's talk about Google. Google did something. They released a brand new OS. The only reason I'm excited about it is it's written in Rust. That's like literally the only reason that I'm interested. Not true. Whenever a large company like this invests the time and effort to make an OS, it means that they're filling a problem that they've seen, that they've had, that they're dealing with, that the current solutions don't deal with. So I think it's always, whether the OS is viable, whether it's something you're going to use, it's always good to investigate why they made a new OS and what problems it's trying to solve that the other ones don't actually solve. So they released Kata Os. Google open source blog announcing Kata OS and Sparrow. I haven't dug too far. I pretty much stopped reading when I read this. That's all I needed to know to start supporting the project. Kata OS is implemented almost entirely in Rust. Whew. Like, do we need to say more? This is my new daily driver. That's what it is. So anyways, I definitely suggest that you go read up on it, why they're doing it. It is focused on embedded and RISC-V. Not only RISC-V, but embedded systems for sure. You're talking about like your built with a RISC-V architecture, and 64-bit ARM. So like it's really looking for those like if you read into it, a lot of it's focused on the edge stuff. That's what they're looking for. Is this OS to run on the edge, on your device, on the thing. So that's what it's looking for. So I'm interested in watching it. So anyways, I'm putting that in the GCP news. Yeah. Other things, what's new in Google Cloud databases? Something that's uniquely interesting to me. They're more unified, more open, and more intelligent. I'm gonna challenge this more open part because I actually read this article and I have no idea how they make the claim of more open. But yeah, they brought some stuff. I'm gonna like go down here. So they basically have a bunch of cloud databases, and they're just making progress on each one of these. So you have Cloud Spanner, Cloud Bigtable, Alloy for Postgres, and BigQuery. Now, I think the reason they say more open is they have this. Recently, they released Cloud SQL for Postgres. Now, the big thing that I saw here, I didn't realize this, and I wanted to point it out to you guys because this is fantastic. Spanner is a 5.9s. That's fantastic. Spanner's availability is at 5.9s. Now, it's not PostgreSQL. It offers a PostgreSQL interface. I think that's where they're saying more open, but I don't know. Anyways, I saw that. Thought I had to report on it. Yes, you are right, Rubber Cable. This product supports Rust. I support this message. You are right. I do. All right. Let's see. What's new with Google Cloud? As far as this week goes, there was not there's been a lot on this with the advanced log analysis with BigQuery. This seems like a repeat of old content. Rapid vulnerability detection, the zero configuration service, and security command center premium that detects vulnerabilities like exposed admin interfaces, weak credentials, and incomplete software installations is now available in public preview. So anyways, we covered this earlier. Basically, this is to it kind of added on to their WAF, and is a really important thing. But it's now in public preview, so everybody can go and try it and use it. So that's good. Very good. All right, we'll move on to Azure. How much extra is the fifth 9? I don't know. So to go with Spanner's 5 nines of availability, I'm assuming they mean that you have to have it replicated to another region, probably in another. So basically, you'd have to pay to have your data twice in their cloud anyways. You can't just have it. That's generally how they do those types of things, where there's more availability. Is like, okay, well, you have your data in US East and US West, and you have fully duplicated a hot standby, and that's how they get the 5 nines. So basically, you pay double. That's the answer. For how much you pay, it is double. Also, good morning to all of you. It's great to see all of you on here. I'm kind of honored that all of you choose to spend an hour of your time with me each morning. Or not each morning. Every Monday. All right, so let's talk about Azure. I'm actually pretty excited about some of the stuff that happened in Ignite. And you guys will see why. You'll see why. In Develop, introducing Express Route Metro. I don't know who came up with the naming, and I know that naming is hard. I've had to name products myself, and it's bad, and it's hard. What's Metro? This makes me think of your Metro UI. Sorry, my Windows desktop is over there. That's why I'm pointing that way. If you guys could know, there's also a vacuum that way. All right. Well, anyways, this is allowing you to create private networks from your data center to Azure. This can be super important for compliance, security, also just speed is a big deal. So a lot of times what some people will do is they actually have their databases that run in their own data centers. But just to expand really quickly for really high load or things like Black Friday shopping or Valentine's Day, if you happen to be like my company was that did software for industrial kitchens, Valentine's Day, you have a massive peak and you just can't scale that fast. Or, your data centers are technically a little cheaper than the clouds. You use them to have that overflow. So these private network connections are super important for things like that, as well as edge locations, allowing you to connect them in, giving you more security and faster speeds. So this is really good. Generally availability, Custo. That's what I'm going to call it. Custo. So this has gone to generally available. So if you're using that, more availability zones and whatnot. So you can find this on GitHub, Azure Custo Tender. So if you're wanting to look at it, it's actually pretty cool that Microsoft has so much open source. All right. So here's a blog that I found from Ignite. So these are just 5 cybersecurity announcements at Microsoft Ignite. So again, this is Microsoft reporting on it. So, and Azure is my weakest point. So I'm learning Azure. But yeah. All right. So I love it that they had a good focus on security. They had a lot of different things coming in here. One of the things that I was really excited about was this right here, the Microsoft Defender for DevOps. It is exciting to see. Microsoft has a really cool DevOps platform. That's one thing that I've been learning. They have a cool build pipeline and things like that. And yeah, so I'm excited to see more on that. So here they have their extra identity governance. So that's a new thing that they're doing, as well as lifecycle workflows. They also announce their decrease insider risk and prevent sensitive data from being shared. So there's just more stuff on making sure data doesn't get leaked. Manage security across platform and cloud. Protect at machine speed. Okay, so there was some stuff to their WAF that they also released to make it a little bit better. Let's touch on this for a little bit, though. This Microsoft Defender for DevOps preview. This looks really like a really big deal, or like it will be really useful. So basically, their whole DevOps thing is letting developers and be empowered on it. I'm not an expert on their DevOps, so again, I'm talking about this from a stance of Russell probably knows more about it than me. Let's see. Yes, my Windows desktop is next to my second dishwasher, but I don't have a second dishwasher. I have a water jet fish cooker. You have a rice cooker. I have a water jet fish cooker. Okay? Don't judge me. Don't judge me. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, which probably almost none of you do, then you should join our Discord, because Russell likes to poke fun of us Americans. Russell pokes fun about just about everybody and everything. So yes, let's get on to it. On with it. Let's get on with it. All right, Microsoft Extra Identity Governance preview. So again, this was some. I don't remember what this was. One second. Security is complex. We can help you simplify it. This is going to help you manage all of your security in one place. So your governance, your productivity, your automation, and all of those things is letting you basically try to provision or manage them all in one place, and let you control all of your access and identities across applications from the Azure cloud. So having these things in a simplified manner really can make a lot of a difference. The Defender brand is really growing inside of Microsoft. It seems like it, yeah. It seems like they're doing a really good job with it too. Like that again, that's an outsider perspective. Don't take my word that they're actually doing a really good job, but it seems to me like they're doing a really good job. I've never had my application under attack while behind the Microsoft Defender stuff. That would be like a good validation of it. But it seems like they're doing a really good job. And the bigger deal I saw there was the focus on it. It felt like I almost said 7/5. 75% of the content was around security, the DevOps security, the access and identity security and control. And so I really appreciate that. I feel like cybersecurity, even now, just isn't talked about enough. So anyways, I really appreciated the focus on it. But what I appreciated more than that was this right here. Azure Premium SSDs V2 disk storage in preview. You all know that it's not an opinion. AWS, if you're doing a database, if you want to run a database in the cloud, AWS is the one to pick. Just period. Their SSDs are far superior in almost every single metric. That being said, this is a great step in the right direction for Azure. They are making making a stab at providing SSDs as wow, can't speak in the morning. Providing disk as a service, which is really, really difficult. Providing state as a service is difficult, and I get it. So, anyways, so if you're interested in databases, I do love my fast storage. I really love my fast storage. I do love my fast. I was very excited about this. I'm sorry that I covered so much time on something that you guys probably don't care about. Let's talk about something you do care about. Azure Kubernetes Services, Microsoft Ignite announcement. So this is their Kubernetes managed Kubernetes service, and it got a big update. It used to be only 1,000 nodes in a cluster, and it went up to 5,000 nodes. 5,000. That's actually pretty impressive because I can tell you some of the challenges going past 2,000 nodes. The open source project itself doesn't like going past 2,000 nodes. And so they've actually had to do a lot of stuff to push this limit. And this is a 5x increase. This is, if you had to have 5 Kubernetes clusters in Azure, you could condense those into one. Not saying that you want to do that. If you've already got it all set up where you're jamming with 5, just keep them. But this is awesome. So, yeah. Anyways, they then also had more... they had more things that they released in AKS. If you watched my Kubernetes release notes, you'll know about the dynamic IP allocation, and it has helped. This is what I said. If you're running in a cloud, you could the providers, the people in bare metal, could be using this, and Azure started using them. It's actually really cool to see something from the release notes directly affect a cloud provider. I was actually thinking more bare metal people, but the providers also are there. They're the bare metal layer. So, and then they go into some of the stuff here. Then maintenance windows and event grids. General availability of ARM-based nodes for improved price for performance. So they released their ARM64 node pools. So into general availability, they were in private or public preview before this. So yeah. Okay, so how do you... Oh, good question. Good question. On SSDs, how do you evaluate SSDs across cloud providers? You pay a decent amount of money to run their nodes that have the good SSDs, and then you run tests. You run tests on the drives. There's a lot of drive tools that you can use in Linux. So you spin up a Linux VM on it, and you run those tests on it. That's how you evaluate them. And I can, you know what? I should probably do a video on everything I know about drives on AWS, because even on AWS, there's actually a lot of nuance to which ones you should pick. There are ones I would say you don't pick because you actually split the controller. I know way too much about drives on AWS. I'm not going to admit to knowing as much as I do. Maybe I shouldn't make that video. Maybe I shouldn't. That's like randomly deep diving into drives on a cloud. All right. So, this is something that I didn't understand. All right. So we also announced the general availability of AMD Sev SNP confidential VM nodes on AKS. Microsoft support. I don't know what AMD Sev Snip is. Sev Snip. It sounds like something you do to your pets that is inhumane. In Kubernetes, in this capacity or capability will help organizers meet their data security goals and defense in depth. Love defense in depth. I don't know what this means. I'll have to dig into this. Sorry, I didn't dig into everything that they released. Right, Russell. So going to the 5,000. etcd is a problem. etcd is a problem. There's ways to reduce that. Actually, CockroachDB released a really good article on multi-raft, which is something that they did. They basically made an etcd for each namespace to help alleviate that problem. There's some other things that you can do as well with like the requests limits and how the kubelets interact with the control plane and how often they interact with the control plane. So there's a bunch of tweaking that you can do, but I also assumed to go to 5,000, you had to do something interesting. If anybody from Azure Kubernetes service wants to meet with me and enlighten me so I can enlighten the people, I would love to, if you're willing to talk about it. So yeah. I like a database seek versus scan. Okay, so when you're talking about storage in the clouds, there's so much that goes into it. Like, do you get the full drive? So in AWS, let me actually bring up AWS. Let me bring up AWS Instance Types here really quickly. This is a little insider knowledge for all of you. And I can go into GCP as well because they do something a little bit different, which is painful. All right, so let's see here. So here, this is the very interesting part here. You're going to see this here where don't use this one. You can't use this one. And the reason why is this is sharing with 4 other VMs this drive. This is half of a drive, which is actually okay, but not optimal because they actually share it in a pretty intelligent way. So you actually get close to the speeds and you don't have the noisy neighbor for the most part. This is the best one. You should really only use the 2XL because you get the full drive. So you get actually the full performance of the drive and have no noisy neighbor or anything like that on this drive. So this is the type of nuance when you're actually running a database in the cloud where you actually care about the performance. You have to start looking at things like this. This is garbage. This up here is utter garbage. No one should ever use the i3 large. Just not if you're using it for the SSD. It doesn't, you just can't use it. This is acceptable and this is good. So you'll notice everything up from this is full drives. They're just adding more drives. This has 2 of the 2 terabyte NVMEs. This has 4 of them, so on and so forth. But you also need to watch out for the NUMA buses. If you go and look at like this one, this is actually 2 CPUs. You probably don't actually want to use this one because it's no different and just adds complexity because now you need to NUMA pin these 4 of these drives and the other 4 drives that are connected to the other CPU. And NUMA pinning is just painful. So what you do is you actually need to use these because that's actually just half. And that's the smarter thing to do. NUMA pinning is already done for you by AWS, so don't do it yourself. Don't use the metal. That's stupid. All right. Anyways, that's we can get more into drives. There's more nuance than that. That's just the baseline. You want to find the full drive size, and you want to use only full drive size. You don't want to use the quarter. Half is okay, but that's all. Okay, you guys baited me with the drives. I need to not bring up drives. All right, Merrick holding back. Okay, yes. Okay, AMD SEV is memory in use encryption. Oh, when you're SMP is apparently newer, secure nested paging. It appears to have a protection mechanism to stop hypervisors from being able to read guesses memory. They can only see encrypted data. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. So what I'm getting fed here from Russell, and Russell would never lie like I lie, is that I forget where it was, the AMD I don't remember where it was. It might have been here. Yeah, okay. So this right here, this SevSnip, is a encryption of memory in the VM layer, which basically means even the hypervisor, even if the hypervisor gets corrupted or compromised, you can't actually read the memory of the guest VMs, which would be pretty cool. What is NUMA pinning? That's a really good question. And something I didn't start sharing my screen. Oh, okay. There we go. That's what. But what is NUMA pinning? That's actually a really good. I'm sorry. I just saw Rubber Cable Employees stun lock on Merrick. It's super effective. I hate you guys. I do. Okay, that was fantastic. Get me talking about SSDs. NUMA pinning is. I'm going to do it really quickly, and maybe I'll do a Mighty Mini Monday on this because it would be an easy, short topic to talk about. But basically, when you have really big motherboards for servers, they can have 2 or even 4 CPUs in them. And the way they talk is a NUMA bus. And so basically, every CPU has their own PCI lanes and their own memory. So their own memory and their own SSDs that connect directly to that CPU. And then if that CPU needs memory that is directly connected to another CPU, it talks on the NUMA bus. This is really cool because it allows you to have massive systems with 256 threads or cores. But the problem is the NUMA bus is way slower than directly accessing the memory. So what you do is you actually pin applications to a NUMA socket, which basically says you only want this application to store stuff in memory that's directly accessible by this CPU, and you don't want this application running on another CPU. So that's NUMA pinning, and you got to do it for drives, and it's a pain. It's a pain, if nothing else. It's a Yeah, we can find some articles on NUMA pinning. Yep. All right. So there's more. There's still more from Azure Reunite. Distributed Postgres comes to Azure Cosmos DB. So that's cool. Another Postgres. That's great. I love to see it. So yeah, then there was some more stuff around their support for Postgres in action, and they have enhanced MongoDB support. Who cares about MongoDB? I actually don't know of a reason to use MongoDB. Postgres is great. I honestly would never use MongoDB. So yeah, moving on. And that's actually it for my Azure. We can jump into AWS and talk about some of their stuff. Amazon EC2 adds service quotas for Amazon machine images. Actually, so there wasn't a whole lot of AWS. I found the few little tidbits. Again, they're saving for reInvent. Something good, hopefully. So they have some service quotas. That's nice. Maybe the biggest deal, if you're wanting Hindi or Dutch, is that Amazon Lux now launches support for Hindi and Dutch. So Amazon Lux is their, their language and their language model, and so you can use that to transcribe and things. So definitely check that out if you've been wanting to do Dutch and Hindi. If you haven't been, completely useless. AWS Gateway Load Balancer launches a new option to rebalance flows when target fails or degrades. So this is useful. I'm sorry, I just had a brain fart, but this is good. Basically, this helps reduce failover time when a target becomes unhealthy. So this unhealthy is an interesting word in the clouds because a lot of the times nodes won't actually fail. They'll become unhealthy, and they'll become unhealthy in weird ways. And we can get into how those are, not today because we've already talked enough and we have more content to cover, but nodes in AWS or any of all the clouds can become unhealthy in some weird ways where like open connections continue to work, but you can't open new connections. That I've seen quite a bit. That seems to be like a classic. Like any open connections still work, but opening a new connection fails for some odd reason. So like, anyways, this can help with reducing failover time so that you can get rid of those unhealthy nodes and get some new ones. All right, one of the pieces of news is that AWS Managed Microsoft AD is now available on Windows Server. I don't know. This was garbage. AWS had garbage week. Let's move on to Cloudflare, which keeps releasing the news. I know last week we had a ton of Cloudflare news, and they're still at it. Oh, well. All right, how we built Pangora. I think it's Pangora. The proxy that connects Cloudflare to the internet. Now, it used to be that Cloudflare was big on Nginx. You can go and read about it and how they used Nginx, and I actually think that this is a big deal. I think that this is a really big deal that they're moving away from Nginx. Now, interestingly enough here, they didn't release it as open source. I'm actually a little disappointed in you, Cloudflare. Please come talk to me. I know that I tout you enough, so I have to, for them to not think that I'm getting paid by you. I have to be honest. This feels like something you should have open sourced. But while I say that, also understand that open sourcing a project and doing it right is actually a lot of work. When you go to open source a piece of software, it needs to work for more than just you. They could have done Pangora in such a way that it worked for them. And the problem with that is then open sourcing it is useless, and you get a lot of people that try to use it and are just confused, and it's not great for your community. So it's really important to make sure when you do open source something that you support the open source community. And that's another thing, is have an open source community, which means having office hours where they can join in and accept pull requests and have an open roadmap. So it's a lot of work. So I respect it if that's why they didn't open source it. Anyways, Cloudflare, I also usually praise for having some of the best technical blogs out there, and they also kind of dropped the ball on this one as well. It's okay. It's as good as the majority of technical blogs out there, but not usually up to their usual rigor. So this is written in Rust. That's one thing that you can get from this, and that is fantastic. I know that we had an argument later about whether Rust was going to actually last, so we choose Rust. And I really think Russell, and for those that you had it, I think it will. We saw Google writing their new OS in Rust. We saw Microsoft really supporting and pushing it, and AWS is supporting it and pushing it for the most part, because we all kind of agreed that you need one big company to hold on to it. And we kind of have three of the large companies kind of grasping at it. Maybe none of them have adopted it solidly all the way, but and here is yet another. Cloudflare has actually done a lot of stuff in Rust. So yes, I do think, and that's why I brought that up as why you wouldn't open source it, is they have a specific problem, and Nginx didn't fit their specific problem, and they built something to fit their needs. That being said, I'm not sure I would say that nobody else has this type of problem or couldn't benefit from the functionality it brings. But maybe I'm wrong. Anyways, super cool. And you should read it. They have good links. It's a good blog. All right. Let's see. Let me catch up on notes here. MongoDB is web scale. You're getting a ban for that. The word web scale is what's getting you banned. Just to be clear, not web, not MongoDB. Which one do you prefer? Cloudflare versus AWS Gateway. So if I had a choice, I would say Cloudflare. They're expensive, but Cloudflare is really good. I think I would go with Cloudflare. Microsoft has put their name behind it. I really do think that you can bet on Rust being around for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Probably. All right. So that's it for our cloud news. Now, I asked you all last week to send me your favorite security projects. Now, I actually left it kind of open as whether we did security. I wasn't looking at offensive hacking tools like Nmap or those things. We can do that as another one as well. I was actually honestly thinking of like what you do in defensive security. And that's what I'm going to cover this week, because this week you guys all failed to give me any projects. So they're all my own selection, which means they're going to revolve a lot around Kubernetes. Shame on you. But that's okay. I did get us some things. I think if we'd like to for next week, let's do our favorite offensive security. Let's do that. So leave a comment or jump in the not in the chat messages in YouTube, but leave a comment with your favorite offensive penetration testing tool that you like to use, or your favorite open source one. You can't call Kali Linux. That's mine, and we'll discuss that. Other than that, we have a couple blog articles here that I thought were worth a read, and I thought we'd check on those before we dive into our open source projects. Just making sure all my tabs are aligned properly. I'm notoriously bad at that. All right. All right, so first thing I saw, this was pretty cool. Enable Gzip compression to speed up web UI for Argo CD. So sometimes when you get a pretty big Argo CD project, it can get kind of slow. So if you're using Argo CD, this is a pretty cool addition. I haven't tried it yet myself, but I was pretty excited to see this because I have had some Argo CDs that get pretty slow. Wix multi-threaded Node.js to cut Kubernetes pod costs. So this was by adding worker threads to its Node.js servers, Wix decreased its Kubernetes pod usage by 70%. So basically just leveraging some multi-threadedness. But this is the reason I brought this up. It seems stupid, but these are some things that you have to think about when designing your system as a whole. And sometimes it can be easy to overlook that. And you're like, oh, just add a new pod. So Equifax surveilled English as a first language is difficult. Equifax surveilled 1,000 remote workers, fired 24, juggling 2 jobs. So they actually provide, I didn't realize this, they provide a service to find out if your employee is working 2 jobs. I didn't realize that they did that. So they actually were dog fooding while they were doing this. That was fantastic. Google's password killer tool is now available on Chrome and Android, but is it available on Linux and Firefox? So that doesn't help me. Moving on. How Microsoft's blunder opened millions of PCs to potential malware attacks. Yeah, this was an interesting one. This was all an issue with Windows updates and their drivers. So basically, they had a corrupted driver. We actually talked about it a couple weeks ago. Anyways, security is such a hard thing. Like, it's easy to point and be like, you did a bad thing. But it's so difficult. All right, so Google AI introduces frame interpolation for large motion, a new neural network. This was interesting. It basically allows you to do super slow-mo. Basically takes 2 already near duplicate photos and can add frames in between them for like super slow-mo. So I don't know. That seemed kind of cool. I thought it was cool. This I found interesting. So AMD-powered exascale supercomputer has system failure every few hours. This is notorious for supercomputers. So if you know how supercomputers work, they all are combined together. So basically every single computer that you see in this rack works as one computer. But that means if there's a fault in one of them, it's like a blue screen of death on Windows. It's like your GPU just going away. And if your GPU goes away, you have an entire system fault. And that's why we've kind of gone away from supercomputers and to this micro architecture of we'll treat every computer like it's its own. This is the reason I brought this blog up. Was this is literally why we don't use supercomputers anymore. Actually, it's at least one of the reasons. And it's maybe people don't realize it because, like, data centers seem like supercomputers themselves, but their whole distributed nature is if one of the VMs fail, it doesn't matter. Where with a supercomputer, it looks like one computer. You're running your Windows desktop and it runs one thing and it says you have 16 billion CPUs at your disposal, but it's still just running one instance of Windows. Or you know, it could run VMs, who cares? But the whole point is if you have a problem with one of those CPUs, the whole system can crash because it's like a bad core in your CPU. So, anyways, it wasn't to poke fun of AWS or AMD's supercomputer. I mean, like, this thing has an immense amount of I was gonna say brain power, but compute power, and it's really cool. And it's not necessarily their fault. That's just actually the nature of the beast. All right, let's talk about open source tools. We have a decent number of them here. Now, if you guys have made it this far and have not hit that like button, it would do me a great honor. That's the last I'll say about it. Thank you very much. All right. Let's see. Let me catch up on, remind me in 24 months about what Google tool. I'm betting it'll be canceled. No, not our new OS in Rust. Not that. Yeah, it will be canceled. The article from Wix did not have a proof of concept. I don't know what you mean by the article from Wix did not have a proof of concept. I'm happy to dig into what you'd like from a proof of concept. They do have clips of different things that they did. If you're talking about like an open source thing where you can deploy it and understand it better, you're right. Probably not. No. No, I didn't mean microservices. When talking about a supercomputer, I'm not talking about microservices, actually. What I'm talking about is in here, there's probably a bunch of servers. This is a server, this is a server, but they're all connected in such a way that they act as one computer. Whereas when you're talking about in your classic data center that we have nowadays, they act as a single computer themselves. Each one of them is its own computer, and there's something that provisions VMs on them for you. So they're all independent, and one failure doesn't cascade. Wasn't talking about microservices. Kubernetes and F-35s. Yep. All right. Let's talk about open source tools. These are ones I know of in Kubernetes, have used all of them to a certain varying degree. Not all of them have I used in production, but yeah, they're definitely worth looking at. KubeArmor, runtime protection for Kubernetes and other cloud workflows. So this first section is about runtime protection. Basically, they're looking for anomalies while running. So this isn't like your static scanning of code or things like that. This is I'm running and I'm looking for anomalous behavior. So KubeArmor is one of those. And Falco is the other one. So Falco is another runtime threat detection engine. Falco is probably the bigger name in this, and it's the one that I have much more experience with. I've always liked Falco, so definitely give it a look if you're interested, if you want some. All right, the next thing that we have is SigStore. There's nothing out there like it, so this is the only one in its category. A new standard for signing, verifying, and protecting software. There are things that you can use to sign. I mean, shoot, you can sign software with just about anything, but I really think that this is the gold standard for helping secure your supply chain. So, yep, that's one open source project. All right. The next we have 3 in this, and I had 3 because there's 3 policy engines, and they do it differently for each one. This one got first because I actually know the person. I know the person. I'm a horrible person, but I actually know. I know this guy. Oh, and I know this guy. And I know this guy. I don't know these. So I know some of the people that work on it. It's an interesting take. I don't know that it's as good as the other ones, but it's an interesting take on it. Letting you write it in, it doesn't require you to have a new domain-specific language or query language. It allows you to write policy as code, which is an interesting take on it, and I like it. I don't know that it necessarily has as many features as the other ones do, or as big of communities. But it's an interesting take. The other ones require you to have a domain-specific language, which is fine. The other one, the first one is OPA. I think that this is the one with the biggest community, and it's also the oldest in the thing, the open policy agents. It allows you to do a lot. I'm not going to get into all the details. We'd be here for a little while, but it does a lot. And the new and upcoming one is Kivano. I know very little about this one. I have only played around with this one. I've never run it in anything that was even close to production. So I'm starting to learn a little bit more about this one. It's getting a lot of traction. So I think it has a lot of promise. So yeah. I think Falco uses eBPF. I do believe it does. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I want to say yes. I think it does. I'm like 80% sure because it does some stuff around anomaly detect. I'm pretty sure that it does. All right. And then let's see. Another one. Sneak. What does Sneak do? Finds and fixes vulnerabilities in 5 minutes. That's what it does. But it scans your container images. At least, yeah, it can. I've actually never used it to scan code. Is that part of the open source? I don't know if that's part of the open source. For the open source part of Sneak, I believe that it only scans vulnerabilities in your container images. So I don't believe that it does any code scanning. And this one was just released 3 days ago. That's how up to date I stand on security things. It's like I knew somebody in the government. Now, a lot of security people are hesitant to trust tools made by the United States government, even if they're open source under the BSD 3 clause. But this is a pretty cool C2 log virtualization. I haven't gotten to use it. It was literally released 3 days ago, but it looks kind of cool. Red Eye is an open source analytics tool developed by the CISA, which is the Information Cybersecurity, and the Department of Energy, Pacific Northwest National Labor, to resist red teams with virtualizing and reporting command and control activities. So again, never used it, throwing it out there for you all. And that's it for my securities. Now, remember, next week I want your favorite offensive security tool, open source tool, and we'll talk about it. And then I actually have been curating a list of topics we're going to discuss and go over. So we're going to hit some more useful ones in the future. I know that a lot of us are software engineers and don't do the security, but this was fun. I had fun looking into these. Absolutely. Everybody. The NSA cannot release an open source project, even though it's open source. And you can go look at the code all you want. Can't do it. I believe that people think that this was probably produced by the NSA and also will not trust it. So. All right. Well, that is it for me today. Thank you all for joining, and have yourselves a fantastic week. And yeah, thanks for joining. I really am honored that you all joined me and that you have all these fantastic chats. I hope that I answered all the questions that were asked, and I look for seeing you guys next week.